Do you ever feel that your food tastes great, but it doesn't always look the part? Well, don't worry, you're certainly not alone. As in my opinion, plating can be one of the hardest things to master, especially because it's not really taught that widely. So in this video, I'm going to be breaking down some real world dishes from some aspiring chefs and home cooks out there who've been following the channel for a while, to hopefully make them stronger and cleaner with a greater emphasis on plate design. So if you're new to the channel, my name's Tom, and I've been a professional food photographer for the past 10 years, working with some of the best visual chefs in the country. So I've photographed literally thousands of plates of food, so I've got a pretty good impression of what works and what doesn't, certainly on the eye. This video is going to be part of the Plating Gym series. You might have seen some in the past where I've broken down some beautiful plates from Michelin-starred chefs I found on Instagram to show what works and what doesn't in terms of composition, in terms of colour, in terms of hierarchy, and all those brilliant graphic design principles that I aspire to on this channel. But I thought it might be helpful to do it with more real-world examples of people who haven't been doing it for 10, 20 years. So whether you're just starting out or trying to refine your style, hopefully you'll find something in these videos which will help you. And in conjunction with the Plating Gym series of videos, I've also written a book, which you may have noticed me talk about many times on this channel. I'm unbelievably proud of it. I had it on Kickstarter and it got funded after just 3 days from this amazing community of platists out there. So not only am I really grateful, but hopefully by incorporating some of the techniques in this book into what I talk about in these videos, it will give you a really good impression of what the channel's about and hopefully how it can help you develop as I said, as a home chef or as a professional cook. So like me, if you're looking to level up your plating, let's get into it. So the first plate I'm going to look at on this video is this one here. Just to give you an idea of what we've got salmon, olives, gooseberry, lime, cinnamon. We've got some croutons here. It looks like the salmon has been sort of flaked, and then it's got the gooseberries possibly on top with the olive on top of that. Clearly some asparagus across there on a nice diagonal angle. Firstly, I want to say that anybody who submits their pictures, I think, is incredibly brave to put themselves through this, but it also shows a degree of wanting to develop as a chef and certainly as a platist, which I think is really, really important, as it's such an intrinsic part of food, is that first initial wow when somebody puts the plate down in front of you. The first thing we see is the beautiful little asparagus going across here. Whether that's the star of the dish or not, I think is open to interpretation. I think that can only really be answered by the chef. But for me, I would imagine the star of this dish should be the salmon underneath there and there. But it's a bit hidden, let's be honest. You can't really see it. Unless you knew the title of the dish, you wouldn't necessarily know, I think, what was there. And that could be sort of maybe the first thing I would say about this dish is it's a little maybe unclear what it is. What is the hero? I think the choice of the black plate is a pretty brave one. Most of the time we're seeing plate on white plates or neutral colours. Black is a brave choice, but I think a strong one with this one because it certainly will pop against this green of the asparagus. And if we could see a little bit more of the salmon, I think it would be a much better, powerful choice of plate colour effectively. The other thing I would say about this plate is I think it's almost a bit too full for what's on there. There's not a great deal of negative space, which again shows a bit of possibly confusion in where you're supposed to go to first or how you're supposed to attack it. And I think the biggest point I would make in terms of the composition of it is possibly these croutons here. It's the first thing my eye is drawn to, not only because of the shapes, but also because of the colour. It's the brightest thing on the plate. Again, because the salmon is covered, the lightest colour is that. And in photography, I know we're talking about plate design here, but in photography, your eye is immediately drawn to the brightest thing in the frame and what's in focus. Clearly, all of this is in focus, but for me, the brightest thing is immediately the toast or the croutons there, which can cause, again, a little bit of confusion because I don't think the toast is going to be the most important thing that you want the eye to go to immediately. So what I would maybe suggest is to have less on the plate to start with. So possibly make these a little bit smaller, cut them in half, have less of them potentially. I'd really like the char around the edge. I'm sure if this is made by the chef, it's going to taste amazing. And that crunch with everything, again, will work really well. But again, with this, we are not talking about what it tastes. This is purely aesthetics on how the plate has been sent in. What about maybe more of a linear layout across the plate, possibly using slightly shorter, maybe cut the asparagus in half, because I think straight away it's too long for the plate. So maybe cut them in half or maybe find slightly shorter ones, something like that. Have less of these. Have less of the croutons, maybe just have one of the circles of the salmon. Maybe if you tried using a linear, but also in a more isolated layout. So you could have the salmon without anything on top, then have some of the gooseberries over the plate, something like that. And then have, again, I like the angle of the asparagus going that way, and then slightly less of the croutons. So again, maybe half that size, something like that. which I think could give the plate a bit more elegance. Without knowing what the chef's actually going for, I would suggest this is a more modern plate rather than more rustic plate. So I think isolated and linear could work very well for this layout. But overall, I think it's a fantastic looking plate of food. Just a few minor tweaks in terms of possibly the scale of it would work really well. And then, as I said, changing the layout slightly so we know what is the star of the dish, and we're not confused by possibly what else is on there, would work really, really well. So brilliant dish, sure it tastes great. A few minor tweaks and I think it would be almost there. Let's move on to the next one. This is actually from the same guy, and I really, really like this one. I know it looks incredibly simple, but I think that is where the strongest part of this dish lies. In the small bit of information he sent to me about this dish, it's basically cabbage rolls on some sort of, I'm assuming, some sort of tomato-based sauce. He actually called it brutalist plating, which I think is absolutely right. Now, if you're interested, I've done a video coming out on the 11th of July, so I think that's this Friday, which is all about ugly plating as such. And I think this possibly falls into it because brutalism is a form of architecture, which is no bells and whistles, no frills, concrete architecture, firm lines, and very bold colours. And I think this absolutely describes this brilliantly. It's minimal, which I think is great. I'm sure if you cut into the cabbage rolls, you'll see a lot more ingredients and things like that. I've got absolutely no idea what's in there. But I absolutely like the fact that he's layered the cabbage rolls on top of one another, there and there, which I think will add a nice bit of height. I've only got it from this angle, unfortunately, but I like that already. I think that's really, really powerful. Again, the use of the black bold just makes the red pop. And then the green on top of the red, as you may know from watching my colours video, those are complementary colours, which again are on opposite sides of the colour wheel, which again adds contrast. Contrast is really, really powerful. And especially when the layout is quite so simple as this, you really need to punch it up with colours. And again, with the black, the red and the green, brilliant. The texture of the leaves of the cabbage there, again, adds a nice bit of texture to it. This, for me, is a really, really confident plate of food. The other one I've seen a lot of times before, very rarely seen something like this, which again, I think can make it stand out and really, really make it pop. I would love to be served this. It would be amazing. I'd be very interested to know what diners think of this. In fact, I'd be very interested to know what you think of this. Do you prefer this style of plating, or are you more, possibly a bit like me, prefer something like this? A bit more simple, a bit more intentional, but still really, really powerful. I love it. And then finally, I have another plate of food where this time I actually have two images, which is pretty good. So this is a stacked layout. So you've got mashed potato on the bottom, as you can see here, and then you have steak on top and some mushrooms. Straight away, works brilliantly as a stacked layout. I think it's a very rustic dish. It's a very modern dish in terms of the way it's laid out and plated. I would love to eat this. I mean, just that steak with everything, all the juices dripping onto the potato underneath, you just know it's going to taste good. The mushroom on top, again, just works really, really well. Again, I don't know a huge amount about the thought process or why this has been plated like this, but for me, it screams autumn. It screams seasonal. It screams local, which again, works very, very well with that kind of layout. The mushroom on the top, I think, adds a nice bit of texture and a nice bit of visual interest when you see it from this angle, which is pretty cool. What else do I like? I like how he has drizzled the sauce in little droplets around here. Possibly a little, I don't know whether the sauce is split there or something like that, or maybe it's just been laid out on the plate too long. It may well be something like that, which is a little unfortunate, but I love the little dots of sauce placed like that. I think it looks really, really good. I think plate choice is really good as well. Could have just been on a boring, white, simple plate, but these little lines here just add a bit of visual interest to the plate. It's kind of like they're funneling your eye towards the dish as well. It's kind of all pointing towards it, which is a pretty cool choice. Again, when you pick a plate like that, I'm not suggesting you need to look at it in that much detail, but straight away it's pointing towards the food, and I think that makes it look pretty cool. Proportion-wise, from this angle, I think it looks brilliant. You know, you've got a nice amount of negative space all the way around the edge, which looks intentional, because again, we've got a gap, the same distance all the way around between the texture and then the completely whiteness of the plate, which is really, really nice. So I think from the top angle, the proportion is really good. Let me just get rid of these. However, I think when we get down to underneath or from the side, I think the proportion doesn't work quite as well, to be honest with you. It's like it's almost a little bit too high now, which I think can make it look a little bit inelegant, if that's right. But for an autumnal plate, it's probably not that big a problem. But just from my eye, it's almost like just a little bit too high, possibly trying to make each element a little bit smaller and a little bit lower. Maybe you could even use a different style of potato, possibly, if you used maybe sliced potatoes or something like that. Still in a ring, but sliced potatoes going in there. You would maybe have a little bit more interest in texture and things like that. I'm not a chef, so I don't know, but just from a visual point of view, that might make it look a little bit different and potentially a little bit more interesting maybe. And then also just slightly less height, I think would be pretty good. But either way, what a wonderful plate of food. It would be something in wintertime with a nice glass of red wine that I would absolutely love to devour that. It would be amazing. So come on, what do you think? Tell me about what you think about these plates. Do you have any favourites? What sort of food would you really like to try and plate as well? So do you think you might be brave enough to submit one of your plates for this sort of critique? Well, if you are, tell me why in the comments below. And if you are interested in improving your plating, can I recommend checking out the plating gym in a little bit more detail? You'll find a link in the description below. And while you're down there, you'll also find my free Plate Like a Pro guide. It's been downloaded literally thousands of times by amateurs and pros alike, and hopefully you find some really good use in it. It's only one page, it's free, so why not check it out? So there we go, another printing critique video finished. If you'd like to see a few more in this series, click on the video here and I'll see you there.